About 100 miles from Florida tonight, 4 Russian warships steaming into Havana Bay, including a nuclear-powered submarine.
It is the biggest, most powerful warship in the world.
Imagine a single warship with the power to wipe out an entire city, reduce countries into ruins, and alter the course of history in just a matter of minutes. This isn't a scene from a sci-fi thriller, it's a terrifying reality. With tensions between countries heating up and the competition for resources getting fiercer, most nations are getting ready for battle, and having a strong navy is more important than ever. Join us as we unveil the most powerful navies and discover what makes these maritime giants deadly players on the world stage. United States Navy. When it comes to naval warfare, the United States Navy is definitely not one to be messed with. They've got the manpower, the combat capabilities, and the warfighting assets to back it all up. It's no wonder they're considered one of the most powerful forces on Earth. We're talking about over 438,561 personnel, including 336,978 active duty members and 101,583 in the ready reserve. That's a whole lot of manpower right there. But it's not just the numbers that make the Navy so powerful, it's also their combat capabilities and warfighting assets that really set them apart. As of July 2023, the US Navy had over 299 combat vessels and 4,012 operational aircrafts. They have 11 nuclear-powered aircrafts that can launch fighter jets, bombers, and surveillance aircraft right into enemy territory. And if that's not impressive enough, they've also got 9 helicopter carriers for marine invasions and rapid response air support. The Navy's guided missile cruisers and destroyers, 22 and 70 of them respectively, are no joke when it comes to surface warfare. They're equipped with top-of-the-line Aegis missile defense systems and can launch cruise missiles that can strike targets thousands of miles away with deadly precision. The Navy also has a fleet of over 70 nuclear-powered submarines. These submarines operate in stealth beneath the ocean and carry various ballistic missiles, each capable of delivering multiple nuclear warheads across vast distances. In the event of a nuclear conflict, these submarines give the US a second strike capability, ensuring that even if the homeland were struck, the Navy could retaliate with unimaginable force.
To a U.S. Navy nuclear ballistic missile submarine, part of our efforts to deter potential nuclear threats.
But you want to know what really takes the cake? The USS Zumwalt. This bad boy is one of the Navy's newest warships, and it's no joke. The USS Zumwalt DDG-1000 is the biggest and most high-tech surface combatant ship in the world. It's got this crazy electric propulsion system, a wave-piercing tumble-home hull, and a stealth design that makes it super hard to spot, whether it's close to shore or way out at sea. Plus, it's decked out with all the latest warfighting technology and weaponry. This ship is no slouch when it comes to sensors either. It's got active and passive sensors, and this thing called a multi-function radar that can keep an eye on the air and even do some snooping over land. China. China has been making waves, and not just in the literal sense. The People's Liberation Army Navy, or PLAN for short, has been flexing its naval muscles, and it turns out they've got more ships than the US Navy. The plan has around 355 ships, and they're planning to expand to 420 ships in the next few years. That officially makes them the biggest navy in terms of the number of vessels. But before you start thinking they've got the upper hand, let's take a closer look. Sure, they've got the numbers, but when it comes to strength, the US still holds the crown. With over 500,000 personnel, the US Navy outnumbers the plan, which has about 300,000 personnel. Plus, the aircraft on US carriers are more capable and can carry heavier payloads than Chinese aircraft, giving the US a big advantage in air power. So, while China's got quantity, the US still has the quality. But China's got some seriously deadly warships, like the Type 055 destroyer, also known as the Renhai class. This warship is armed to the teeth with advanced weaponry like anti-ship missiles, surface-to-air missiles, and a vertical launch system that can unleash a variety of missiles. It also has stealth capabilities, making it a sneaky little devil that's hard to detect by enemy radar. Russian Navy. The Russian Navy has a total of around 160,000 naval personnel and a fleet of approximately 360 ships. We're talking about an aircraft carrier, 5 cruisers, 12 destroyers, 11 frigates, 81 corvettes, and over 68 submarines. That's a whole lot of firepower floating around out there. It's no wonder that many people view the Russian Navy as a potential global threat. Some people believe it's the one navy that could potentially bring about the end of the world. And honestly, can you blame them? What with the whole Russia-Ukraine situation, it's hard not to see Russia as a bit of a threat on the high seas. One of the most fearsome warships in the Russian Navy is the Kirov-class battlecruiser, particularly the Pyotr Veliki. This massive vessel is fully armed with advanced weaponry, such as anti-ship missiles, surface-to-air missiles, and torpedoes. The Kirov-class battlecruisers are among the largest and most heavily armed warships globally, designed to take on and destroy enemy ships, submarines, and aircraft. Their sheer size and firepower make them a significant threat in naval warfare. Now, Russia might not be known for being the most technologically advanced country in the world, but when it comes to their navy, they don't mess around. They've put a ton of effort into making sure their ships are decked out with the best technology money can buy. Because let's face it, they know that at any moment they could find themselves in a fight, and if they're the ones starting it, they better be equipped and ready. Indonesian Navy. Did you know that Indonesia has the 4th best navy in the world? It's pretty surprising considering they're not known for getting involved in a lot of conflicts. Sure, they've been invaded in the past, especially during their fight for independence and regional conflicts, but they're not the ones starting wars, and when provoked, they sure know how to defend themselves. And how exactly do they defend themselves? Well, it's all about that strategic thinking. You see, Indonesia is no stranger to its own geography. As an archipelago, they've got a whole bunch of islands scattered across the water, and they know that a navy is their best bet for keeping those islands safe and sound. With over 243 ships and 75,000 naval personnel, Indonesia's navy is no joke, and they've got the muscle to back up their strategy. Their deadliest warship is the KRI Nanggala 403, a seriously powerful attack submarine. This warship is decked out with all the latest tech and weaponry. Commissioned in 1981, the KRI Nanggala is a nightmare for anyone thinking about causing trouble in Indonesian waters. South Korean Navy. The South Korean Navy, also known as the Republic of Korea Navy, is a pretty big deal in East Asia. With its fancy technological gadgets, strategic influence, and obsession with maritime security, they're the talk of the town. This navy is not one to be underestimated, boasting a fleet of around 150 ships and 70 aircraft, including helicopters. They've got everything from helicopter carriers to destroyers and frigates, making them the envy of their neighbors. One of their coolest but deadliest ships is the Sejong, the Great-class destroyer. This warship is armed with all kinds of missiles and has top-notch radar and missile guidance systems. At over 10,000 tons, it's one of the biggest and most powerful destroyers out there. The South Korean Navy takes their job seriously, and for good reason. They know firsthand the cost of war, thanks to the Korean War in the 1950s. They're not about to let history repeat itself, especially with all the tension around North Korea and the turbulent waters of the Yellow Sea and East China Sea.
The South Korean Navy is conducting a maritime exercise to better defend its western sea border against possible North Korean provocations there.
With their high-tech missiles and determination to keep the peace, they're definitely not a navy to be taken lightly. Japan Navy. Japan Navy, also known as the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, JMSDF for short, has quite a unique story. After World War II, Japan was all about peace and adopted a constitution that said, no war. They were all like, we're not going to fight internationally and we're not going to have a big military just hanging around. Instead, they decided to focus on being all high-tech rather than building a massive offensive military force. And that's how the JMSDF came to be in 1954. Their mission? To make sure Japan's maritime interests are safe and sound, and to help keep the peace around the world. They're all about patrolling, keeping an eye on things, making sure sea lanes are protected, and lending a hand during disasters. But you see, even though Japan is all about peace, they made sure to have the JMSDF around just in case. While they say they're a defensive force, they're totally ready to handle any threats that come their way. The JMSDF has about 51,000 active personnel and a whole fleet of over 150 ships. It's like having a security system for your home. You hope you never have to use it, but it's there just in case. One of Japan's impressive naval warships is the Yamato, a real heavyweight. This is the largest battleship ever built, tipping the scales at over 72,000 tons. Commissioned in 1941, the Yamato saw some major battles during World War II, like the Battle of the Philippine Sea and the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Sadly, with all its awesomeness, the Yamato got taken down by the Americans in April 1945. Fast forward to today, and they've got over 100 other ships in their fleet. One of the most deadly warships they've got is the Atago-class destroyer, especially the JS Atago DDG-177. These warships are decked out with all sorts of missiles, ones that can take out targets in the air, on the sea, and even on land. At over 10,000 tons when fully loaded, these destroyers are some of the biggest and most powerful in the world. Indian Navy. The Indian Navy is a big deal. With India being one of the largest nations in the world, they've put a lot of effort into strengthening their naval capabilities. They've really gone all out to modernize and strengthen their fleet. Instead of trying to build everything themselves, guess what they did? They took a smarter option. They bought ships from other countries. This has helped them grow their fleet much faster. Right now, the Indian Navy has about 68,000 active personnel and around 300 ships. With such a huge coastline and potential threats coming from all directions, having a strong and versatile navy is super important for keeping their borders safe and making sure the seas are secure. One of their most dangerous warships is the INS Mormugao D-67. This bad boy is a Visakhapatnam-class guided missile destroyer packed with top-notch weapons and technology, making it a powerful contender on the warfront. It's 535 feet long and loaded with BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles, Barak 8 surface-to-air missiles, torpedoes, and anti-submarine rockets. The INS Mormugao is a serious asset for the Indian Navy, ready to take on all kinds of missions and threats. French Navy. The French Navy is ranked 13th in the world. But don't let the number fool you, they're one of the oldest and most historically significant naval forces in the world. The French Navy has strategically worked hard to build up a fleet that can handle any threats from their European neighbors or from anywhere else in the world. Now, let's talk numbers. The French Navy's current fleet includes a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, 3 helicopter carriers, 11 destroyers, 11 frigates, and 10 nuclear-powered submarines. That's over 180 ships operated by approximately 37,000 personnel. While they may not have the largest fleet in the world, they've got experience, versatility, and a well-balanced mix of advanced ships to make up for it. One of their coolest warships is the Charles de Gaulle R-91, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. It's the biggest warship in Western Europe, weighing in at 42,500 tons. It can carry up to 40 aircraft, and its nuclear reactors mean it can go for a long time without refueling. Plus, it's got top-notch radar, electronic warfare systems, and all kinds of weapons. Royal Navy. The Royal Navy is Britain's marine pride and joy. When it comes to naval forces, the United Kingdom's Royal Navy is like that distinguished elder statesman at a fancy party, always commanding attention and respect. Back in the day, the British naval fleet was legendary. We're talking about one of the oldest and most powerful naval forces in the world that helped to build and maintain the vast British Empire. The Royal Navy has approximately 34,000 active personnel and a fleet of around 90 ships, not to mention roughly 175 aircraft. As of 2024, they've got over 66 commissioned ships, including 2 aircraft carriers, 6 guided missile destroyers, 9 frigates, and 10 nuclear-powered submarines. They've also got a large number of other vessels for various purposes. Think mine countermeasures vessels, patrol vessels, and survey vessels. In other words, they've got all their bases covered. The Royal Navy isn't just for show. They can project power on a global scale and handle all sorts of threats, whether they're above or below the water. They've got this killer warship called the HMS Queen Elizabeth RZO-8, which is an aircraft carrier that's almost 920 feet long and can carry up to 40 aircraft, including those fancy F-35B Lightning II fighters. The HMS Queen Elizabeth is like the crown jewel of the Royal Navy's fleet. It's got all the bells and whistles, advanced radar, electronic warfare systems, defensive weapons, you name it. Turkish Navy. You see, Turkey may not have any oceanfront property, but it's got the next best thing. 2 fabulous seas right on its doorstep, the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. Now, you might think that not having direct access to the big blue oceans would put a damper on Turkey's naval prowess, but that's not the case. Those 2 seas have seen more action than a swashbuckling adventure novel, and Turkey knows that having a strong naval presence is key to keeping potential adversaries at bay. So, what exactly does the Turkish Navy bring to the high seas? Well, this fleet is more diverse than a school of fish. They've got a helicopter carrier, 5 amphibious assault ships, 16 frigates, 10 corvettes, 11 mine warfare vessels, 35 offshore patrol vessels, and 12 submarines. That's enough firepower to make even the sea god take notice. Just like fashion-forward France and the UK, Turkey knows that keeping up with the latest naval trends is crucial. In a world where bigger is often seen as better, Turkey is making sure its naval forces are as modern and capable as they come. After all, when it comes to defending your territory against adversaries with deep pockets, having a top-notch fleet is non-negotiable. One of the most impressive ships in the Turkish Navy is the TCG Anadolu L-400. This warship isn't just an amphibious assault ship, it's also a light aircraft carrier. At 761 feet long, this beast can carry up to 30 helicopters or 30 to 50 unmanned combat aerial vehicles. It's fully armed with defensive weapons, can go 50 days without needing to restock, and is designed for those long-haul military missions. Plus, it can even moonlight as a command center and flagship for the Turkish Navy. Now that's what we call multitasking. Italian Navy. From world wars to present-day conflicts, the Italian Navy has always been a big deal. All this war experience has made them pretty good at managing a strong naval force and giving potential enemies a run for their money. With 31,000 personnel, they've got the skills and the ships to give any potential adversary a run for their money. What sets the Italian Navy apart? Well, for starters, their ability to constantly evolve and keep their enemies guessing. You never quite know what type of ship you might encounter when facing off against these seafaring experts. Speaking of ships, the Italian Navy's fleet is nothing short of impressive. From advanced combat vessels to a whole assortment of auxiliary ships, they've got all bases covered. And let's not forget about the Caio Duilio D554, an Orizzonte-class air defense destroyer. This warship measures over 501 feet and can reach speeds of up to 54 kilometers per hour. With an arsenal of guns and missiles, it's not a ship you'd want to mess with. But it's not just about firepower. The Caio Duilio is also equipped with some seriously advanced systems like multifunctional 3D phased array radar, long-range 3D radar, secondary surveillance radar, multi-sensor target indication system, and electronic warfare systems. In other words, it's ready for anything you throw at it. Brazilian Navy. While the Brazilian Navy may not always grab the spotlight on the global stage, this maritime force packs quite the punch within South America. From its role in Brazil's fight for independence to its modern-day capabilities, the Brazilian Navy is unstoppable. Since its early days, the Brazilian Navy has been on a mission to enhance its capabilities. By tapping into international connections, it has managed to acquire an impressive fleet of ships and aircraft, boosting its operational strength. And let's not forget about its merchant navy, which plays a crucial role in supporting the nation's economy. With over 100 vessels under its belt, the Brazilian Navy is not messing around. From aircraft carriers to auxiliary river ships, this fleet is as diverse as it is intimidating. But enough about the whole fleet, let's zoom in on one of the real heavy hitters, the Niterói-class frigate, also known as the HMS Greenhow F-49. Fully armed with 8 Exocet anti-ship missiles, several guns, and 2 triple torpedo launchers. This bad boy means business. This warship is also decked out with some seriously advanced systems like Thales DA-08 air surface radar, Thales Steer 180 fire control radar, and Thales Tacticos combat management system. In other words, this ship is not to be messed with. Royal Australian Navy. This maritime force has come a long way from its humble beginnings as a branch of the British Empire. Initially, the focus was on keeping the shores safe, but as Australia spread its wings and gained independence, the Royal Australian Navy transformed into an intimidating defensive force, ready to tackle threats at home and beyond. With a fleet that includes not just your average vessels, but also landing helicopter docks and replenishment oilers, the Royal Australian Navy is all about versatility. They've got their hands in pretty much every major conflict that affects their interests, earning them a well-deserved reputation on the global stage. Now, let's talk about Australia's big guns, or in this case, big warships. The HMAS Hobart DDG-39 is no ordinary vessel. As part of the Hobart-class air warfare destroyers, this warship is equipped with over 48 vertical launch missile cells, not to mention a bunch of guns and torpedo tubes. And let's not forget about its fancy Aegis combat system with AN/SPI-1 radar, giving it top-notch air defense, anti-submarine, and anti-surface warfare capabilities. The HMES Hobart is one of the Navy's secret weapons, ready to take on whatever comes its way. Royal Thai Navy. While they may not have the largest fleet in the world, they certainly make up for it in strategic genius and a touch of stealthy sophistication. Now, we won't get into the nitty-gritty details of their fleet count, as that seems to be a bit of a closely guarded secret. But word on the street is that they've got approximately 130 vessels at their disposal. They have frigates with surface-to-air missiles, fast attack crafts with surface-to-surface missiles, and even some large coastal patrol crafts thrown into the mix. Oh, and let's not forget about the coastal mine layers, minesweepers, and landing crafts. With neighboring nations flaunting their own naval capabilities, it's crucial for Thailand to have a strong naval presence to protect its territorial waters and maritime interests. After all, you never know when an attack might pop up, so it's best to be prepared. German Navy. The German Navy has around 65 ships, not just for their own use, but also for lending a helping hand to other nations or NATO when needed. One of the most deadly warships in the German Navy is the Saxon-class frigate. This warship is 469 feet long and packed with 32 surface-to-air missiles, 2 anti-ship missiles, guns, and triple torpedo tubes. The German Navy might have had a rough past, but they're all about teamwork and keeping the waters safe these days. Spanish Navy. Back in the day, they were sailing all over the world, stirring up trouble in South America. But as time went on, they faced some setbacks from Mother Nature and some not-so-friendly opponents. Fast forward to 2018, and the Spanish Navy is still improving with approximately 138 vessels. Sure, they've got some minor auxiliary ships and amphibious assault ships in the mix, but they're not quite the powerhouse they used to be. That being said, Spain has still made some great accomplishments in naval technology. They can proudly claim the development of the first submarines used for military combat. That's right, they were diving into the deep blue sea way before it was cool. Bangladesh Navy. The Navy is all about protecting their nation's interests, both at home and abroad. But what really sets them apart is their dedication to humanitarian efforts. When there's a natural disaster somewhere in the world, you can bet the Bangladesh Navy will be there to lend a hand. With a fleet that includes guided missile frigates, patrol frigates, corvettes, and even a couple of submarines, they've definitely earned their stripes. It's no wonder they're teaming up with the United Nations for peacekeeping missions. Egyptian Navy. Egypt proudly flaunts the largest naval fleet in the Middle East and Africa. Quite the achievement, isn't it? The Egyptian Navy got started back in 1820, and it was made to protect Egypt's interests in the Mediterranean and Red Seas. It's got all kinds of modern ships and a really capable group of people, and they're super important for keeping the country safe and making sure everything's good out on the water. With a history that goes way back to ancient times, the Egyptian Navy is always changing and getting better to deal with any threat or attack. The Egyptian armed forces have over 400,000 active personnel and almost 500,000 reserve personnel. The Navy's got a whole arsenal of modern naval warfare gear, with a fleet of more than 300 ships. And check this out, Egypt's defense budget is no joke at around $4.82 billion, plus they get an extra $1.3 billion in aid from the US. With all that firepower, Egypt's military is totally on top of things, keeping the country safe and making sure everything's stable in the region. Hellenic Navy. The Hellenic Navy, also known as the Greek Navy, has a long and impressive history. Back in the day, the Greeks were feared on the high seas, using their ships for all sorts of important things, like fending off big empires like the Persians. Even though Greece has had its fair share of ups and downs, the Hellenic Navy is still going strong, with around 120 warships and support vessels all geared up and ready to do their thing. Swedish Navy. Can you believe that the Swedish Navy has been around for over 500 years? They've been sailing the seas since 1522, and they've come a long way since then. Their fleet is no joke, with 7 corvettes, 9 countermeasure vessels, 5 diesel submarines, 14 patrol vessels, 165 gunboats, and a bunch of auxiliary ships. Now, they may not have the biggest fleet out there, but they're definitely working on increasing their forces. With all the craziness happening in the world, it's probably a good call to make sure they're ready for anything. As geopolitical tensions rise and competition for vital resources intensifies, the urge to control key sea lanes, project power across vast distances, and protect national interests at sea has become a top priority for many nations. After all, it's better to be safe than sorry, right?